Welcome, mortals. We're checking into room 2805, where a mysterious woman, a luxurious hotel, and a baffling death left more questions than answers. This week, we're unpacking the perplexing 1995 Jennifer Fairgate case, sifting through the tiny amount of facts, the wild theories that followed, and even adding a few of our own on the Parallax Podcast. Don't forget your room key or your tinfoil hat.
Hi, Willow.
Hi, Karisa. I missed you so much.
We are back. I mean, we've been a month off here, and it feels like forever.
Kind of needed it, though.
I would say that we're going to apologize to our listeners, but at the same time, we're not, because we had some pretty big projects.
Yeah.
One of them being, boom, Willow's second book released on January 3rd.
Yes, my second book is out. That was fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so her second novel's out, and she's been doing a bunch of book signings. I've been working behind the scenes, of course, with Willow's book, getting it out for her, getting that pushed out. And then my business partner in the publishing industry, he had a pretty big project I was helping him on that needed to be completed by last week.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, that was a big one that I was just trying to get everything pushed through, and a lot of late nights on that one. Jamie doesn't understand how long sometimes that stuff takes, going back through and sifting through with a fine-tooth comb.
He's so silly. It's I think he gets really big ideas, which is fantastic, but I feel like every once in a while he has this like wonderful big idea and then doesn't realize like there's a lot more that goes into that big idea.
He does realize that. He just forgets that I am still human.
That yeah.
He's like, "Oh yeah, you got this." And I'm like, "You're right, I got this, but just so you know, it does come with lack of sleep."
You're like, "Do I have this? Yes, but I also have 2 other jobs and children, so we're going to see how it goes."
Yes. Yeah, and that's another thing. We both have 2 other jobs. Willow has 2 jobs. I have 2 jobs outside of podcasting, outside of the publishing world, like even outside of us both being authors, me having a publishing company with the book designing and all that stuff. We have other jobs that actually pay our bills, because everything else we do is a labor of love. We only get paid with love. We get paid with love.
We only do a little bit. We're not that busy. It's okay.
Yes, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. But we are back.
Yes.
And like I said in our most recent post on Instagram, we have a lot to bring to you this next year. We have some cool stuff planned. I think one of the ones I'm really looking forward to us tackling is Roanoke. We might do that one in 2 episodes, because that is a lot.
I was going to say, not only is, the like spiritual side of it, just all the different theories, there's so much, and people have dug so deep into this. I feel like we could, that would definitely be one that we could go, like take a really deep dive into.
Yes. So we will cover that sometime here in the next future of 2026. But for this episode, I brought a case to Willow while I was doing her nails one day, and I said, "This is a case." I've always found this interesting since I've actually watched it originally back in the day on Unsolved Mysteries, and it's just been very fascinating. And so I was like, "Hey, maybe go over and look at this case." And remind me, Willow, you didn't know anything about this case prior, correct?
I think I had watched like one video on it several years prior. So it was one of those where I knew, like, if you said Oslo, would like have something in the back of my head. They'd be like, "Oh, I know that name," but I didn't really have anything else to associate with it. That makes sense.
Yeah. So we're going to cover the Jennifer Fairgate case. And, while Willow's going to go over some of the details of the case and we're going to discuss it, we're going to go into the discussion of some of the theories. And I'm asking you as listeners, while we're presenting this case, for you to think of your own theories and maybe email those to us later, because this case is wild. And I would really like to hear some other thoughts, even if they're not of this world, or even if there's something that's completely out there. Share it with us.
Say it anyway, because it's fun.
Yes. So let's get started. And I'm going to let Willow take over for now, but we're going to discuss this case as we go along, and it's going to be good.
Yeah. So I also watched Unsolved Mysteries to get some information for this, but I did a lot of watching and listening to some different sources and some different podcasts and stuff. So I have a combination of like my initial research that's kind of put into a chronological timeline, and then just some like interesting pieces that I picked out from the different things I was listening to. I thought were interesting details I wanted to bring to the table. So to start out with, on the afternoon of May 31st, 1995, a woman arrived at the Oslo Plaza Hotel in Oslo, Norway. The Plaza was one of the city's most prominent hotels at the time, frequently hosting diplomats, business travelers, and international guests. And when it says, or when it, like I'm an it, when I say international guests and diplomats, there were some really important hush-hush conversations that were going on in this hotel. So there were some very important and possibly very dangerous people that would go to this hotel. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind.
Something that maybe you didn't know, Oslo,
Mhm.
the location, is a very neutral capital.
Wondered that while I was listening to these different things, I kept wondering like, okay, what is so important about this
Mhm.
location?
It's a very neutral location, as far as being a capital. It's very neutral. It's a convenient hub for, like, international travel, and it makes any kind of a arrival and exit for people very easy to come and go without really being tracked. I mean, obviously, we have
Makes so much sense.
CCTV. Yeah, we have
Yeah.
CCTV and, like, all the other ways that people can track people now that's a little easier, aside from the people that can hack and, like, erase you.
Mhm.
But this was a very good place for, like, intelligence to get in and get out.
Yeah, I had thoughts. I wondered about that.
Yep. Yes. Yes.
So the woman approached the front desk and requested a room for one night. She registered under the name Jennifer Fairgate, Fairgate, which I believe, from hearing some other stuff from different sources, I believe she originally called and said, I'm going to register under this name. And that's why we got the Fairgate spelling. But when she actually got there and was signing stuff, she had spelled her last name, Fergate. So either way, it's the same person, but those are the two different spellings of her last name.
But someone on the phone could have easily just mistranslated what she was saying,
Yes.
especially if she
Yes.
was not of that nation's descent, had an accent
Mm-hmm.
possibly. She could
Yep.
have easily just said this. I mean, I write that down like, you know what? It sounds close enough. I don't care.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the main theory there as far as the two different spellings, is that somebody just wrote it down, just hearing it. Oh, this is how I would spell it, from how it sounds.
Mhm.
So that one is just interesting thing when I was doing my research and realizing, oh, there's two different ways that we spell this. Great.
Mhm.
So when she checked in, Jennifer Fairgate listed her age as 21 years old and provided an address in, I believe it's Verlaine, Belgium. She also registered as second guest, either Lois or Louis or Louis Fairgate, stating that this individual would arrive later. Now, again, I kind of got some information from different sources, and it was a little bit different, probably because this is a Norwegian case, and so there's going to be some things lost in translation. I believe it is most commonly thought that she registered this second person later. Like when she first came in and was registering under the Jennifer Fairgate name and requested one room, it was just herself. And then I think the next day is when she had called and said, hey, the second person is going to be here. And then housekeeping went up to go and, change things over and set up the room for two people. And that will come into play a little bit later. I think there's one or two places that kind of reported that she registered herself and the second person immediately, but most of the sources said otherwise. So I'm going to
Yeah, I
go
think
with...
that's what I have read always,
Mhm.
was that it was later that she added the second person,
Yep.
Louis. Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to go with on that one. Of course, in saying this, no additional guest ever checked in under that name. So this is just a name, and we do not have a face or figure or shadow or anything to associate with that name.
Now, with traveling a lot
Mm-hmm.
myself, I will add names to my room. That person never has to go to the front desk. That person is there as if they need a key or if they need something, they can say the room number and they say, well, what's your name? Are you on the room? I can only give you this information if you're on the room. So I will list my husband sometimes, or if I was doing a volleyball tournament, I would list my daughter. That way, if she needs something from the room and I'm not available, she can easily go to the front desk and get that. So it could have been that this name was listed for access to the room.
And not to mention the fact, too, that, again, this is a very prominent hotel. So this guy could have come in and they just don't know that that's who he was because he never did go to the front desk, like you said. That's so possible. But of course, did anybody look at the CCTV footage?
Well, but the CCTV footage, this is 1995. There wasn't CCTV back then like there is now.
They did have cameras, but they didn't
not the
pull
same, not as many angles. The camera angles for this were very limited.
And they didn't even bother looking at it anyway. Because, and I wonder too, which I couldn't figure this out, but I wondered, like, some cameras, like especially at the gas stations and stuff, you hear that they only like save the footage for 24 to 48 hours and it records over. So I also don't know if maybe that was the case as well. Like by the time they started realizing, oh, maybe this could be slightly suspicious, the cameras had already recorded over whatever footage they could have found. I don't know. I did wonder about that though.
Yeah, and this is 1995 again, so it wasn't very common to have outside CCTV. That CCTV is fairly new as a common every angle kind of thing.
Yeah.
Individual hotels having security footage is mainly hallways.
I was gonna say it was probably only in the few
elevator
slots.
areas. Yeah, it's
like elevator, front desk,
and elevators.
So the hotel records also show that no passport or government-issued identification was requested at check-in for Jennifer Fairgate, and no credit card was collected, which is interesting. Payment was deferred, which was not entirely uncommon at the time, particularly for international guests, which I think one of the podcasts I listened to had said, well, there's always a possibility that she was able to, say something to the front desk person and be like, well, I'll give you this money or whatever if you don't like ask for, because she had cash there. We have proof that she had cash on her. So I wonder either they just, like it says, it's not uncommon for payment to be deferred as a credit or whatever. They either just were like, okay, we'll just ask you for it whenever you get the chance or whenever you settle and just come back down here and pay. Or if she was able to say something, like say somebody's name, say some kind of phrase, something that made them just be like, oh, okay, and not ask for identification or the credit card at that time. They did, which I thought this was interesting. I didn't know this was even a thing, but the front desk could send messages to the TV in the room. Yeah, I had no idea this was a thing. So they did end up
back then.
Yeah, I was like, okay, cool. But they would literally send her a message that would go to the TV in her room that she needed to come to the front desk so she could pay her balance. And they did that for several days, actually. And she never came down to pay that balance. So they did ask her for it. But anywho, it's interesting. Now, Fairgate did speak fluent English, and she also spoke fluent German. When she checked in, I think she was speaking English, and then there was one time where she had called down to the front desk. I think this is when she was ordering food, and she was speaking German, and both of which she spoke very, very well. So there's a little interesting tidbit there that we'll get into probably a little bit later here. The staff also described her demeanor as calm, reserved, and polite. She was well dressed and did not appear distressed or agitated at the time of check-in. And she was assigned room 2805, located on the 28th floor. So,
high up there.
And I was about to say, I was like, I think my very, very tiny fear of heights would be like, maybe you can take me a little bit closer to the ground. It's a lot of floors. So room 2805 was a standard single room with a bed, television, mini bar, and a private bathroom. It faced outward from the building, overlooking parts of Oslo. According to hotel logs, the woman requested room service only once, ordering a small meal. And I believe this was when she had called down and spoken German. She had ordered bratwurst and potatoes. So that's also a very German thing to order.
Yes, very delicious. But did they do a side to sauerkraut? Because that would complete the order.
I don't know if they did. I know that she didn't eat very much of it. I can't remember. I remember that detail, but I didn't write down how they knew it, like when they found it. But I remember something about, like, I guess she didn't eat all of it, which is kind of lame, but So, and what they did note too, which I think I wrote it down here, the person who brought her the food noted that she was dressed differently. So she was wearing a skirt, and I think they had described like a blazer. So she was very well dressed, and the person who brought the room service actually thought that she was like a flight attendant by the way that she was dressed, and that the room behind her was like pristine. Like, it looked like nobody had even stayed in there. And when she ordered room service, this was like a day or two after she had checked in. But there was no luggage. There was nothing like on the ground or anything. It was pristine behind her. And then she gave them a cash tip. She did give them a large cash tip for bringing her food. Other than that, she made minimal use of the hotel amenities and did not interact socially with staff or other guests. Housekeeping did also note that she placed a do not disturb sign on her door for most of her stay. I believe this happened either Thursday or Friday of her stay, because she had called and asked for the Lois or Lewis Fairgate to be added. Housekeeping went up there and they did up the room for 2 people, adding like an extra duvet and whatnot. They noticed though that the duvet was just like, she had taken it and like the second one folded it up and set it aside, like set it in the closet. And they were like, oh, okay, well, we set this up for 2 people, but that's cool. That's cool. Whatever. But then, and actually I'm going to get into this a little bit later, because there's an interesting thing about those duvets that I'm going to tell you about here in just a second. So then June 1st was when the woman extended her stay by 1 additional night. And this is when the second guest, I believe, was added. And then on June 2nd, she extended her stay again, this time through June 3rd, so for another 2 nights. By this point, the hotel's internal system showed that the room had an outstanding balance, and staff attempted to contact her using the hotel's in-room television messaging system, which is insane. I don't know how, like, that's crazy. They had that. I believe one of the podcasts I listened to stated that they were able to tell when she like saw it or like clicked out of the message or something. And every time that they sent the message, they could tell that she had interacted with the TV to like close out the message basically. So she saw them, but she wasn't doing anything about them trying to contact her.
Or someone saw them.
Someone saw them. So then on the evening of June 3rd, 1995, around 7:30 p.m., the hotel staff was becoming increasingly concerned because the bill wasn't unpaid. Other than her clicking out of it, there was no response to the messages, and they still hadn't really seen any kind of activity in the room. There still was that do not disturb sign on the door. So they went ahead
and no one was ordering room service?
Besides that one time when she had ordered that food. And that was it. And so it was at that point when hotel security was notified, and a security guard was sent to room 2805 to make contact at approximately 7:50 p.m. That's when he knocked on the door of room 2805. There was no verbal response, but moments later, a gunshot was heard from inside the room. And the guard immediately withdrew, notified hotel management and police. He said, "That is above my pay grade. I'm not
my job. Not my job."
He said, "No, I'm getting out of this. I'm not even going to try to enter into this room."
By chance, did you get the transcript of what he said when he was when he was knocking? Like, was there anything that I wonder he said that would trigger someone to be like, okay, I've done too much, I'm ending it right now?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Approximately 15 minutes after the gunshot was heard, officers entered room 2805 using a master key. So there's not a whole lot of time for them to leave, but there's still time. And I guess if you know what you're doing, you can probably get out of that room. And the key fob thingy that you use to like with your little hotel key to, put it in the door thing so it unlocks, that would record when somebody went into the room, but not when somebody left the room. So if somebody wanted to leave in that 15 minutes, they could. And if nobody checked the cameras and nobody's out in that hallway and nobody knows to pay attention, nobody would see anything. So I personally don't think it's that surprising that nobody saw anybody leave the room, because I don't think anybody even knew to look or to be watching for someone to leave the room. Like the guard
literally left the room. You would think the cops would.
You would think so. But this segues perfectly into what I'm about to tell you. This is how they found the body. And I'm sure that as I describe this, you're going to know immediately how they wanted to rule this. But inside the room.
Well, I know the plot twist because I watched this for you.
Well, I know you know the plot twist. I'm saying it for everybody else who might not know the plot twist, Karissa. Just humor me, okay?
I'll pretend like I know nothing.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
But anywho, inside the room, the police discovered the body of a woman Jennifer Fairgate, laying on the bed, positioned on her back. She had sustained a single gunshot wound to the forehead. In her right hand was a Browning 9mm semi-automatic pistol. Her finger was positioned on the trigger. And apparently, when they picked up the gun, which I hope they were wearing gloves, but anyway, when they picked up the gun off of her hand, they heard, and I'm not a gun expert, so forgive me, but they heard the click of like the trigger going back into place. So her hand was still holding pressure on the trigger, which it's a relatively large gun. Some have described that I just forgot the word. It's not kickback. Do you know what I'm thinking of? Like you fire a gun and
well, usually there's a kickback.
Is it kickback? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Oh,
there's
okay.
A kickback. Yeah.
Y'all, can you tell I've like never fired a gun in my life? Okay, so.
But the 9mm is, it's not a large gun.
The specific one that she had apparently some have described as a large gun.
I've seen pictures
of
it. It's no bigger than this.
Okay, because I was going to say, I have no idea. I couldn't tell you whether it was or wasn't. But they did say that its kickback is relatively strong. So
yeah, it's a 9mm. That's a very powerful gun, but it's an easy gun to conceal because it was used a lot of times by spies and government officials.
They did find it interesting that the way her hand was laid on her chest. One, the fact that her hand was still holding pressure on the trigger. Two, they would have thought that the gun would have left her hand. The way that the bullet entered her head, she would have died immediately.
It flew to the side because of the kickback. It wouldn't have landed. Didn't it land on her body?
Yes, it's on her body, on her chest. She's holding the gun on her chest.
Yeah, she shot herself in the head, but then also put the gun relaxed in her hand into her chest. Yeah, makes so much sense.
Yeah. And the way she held it too, when I was watching the episode that I watched for this, there was a man in ballistics who was talking about the scene, and he described that the way she was holding the gun, I think it was her thumb on the. I should have written this down, but the way that she was holding the gun, it was either her thumb or it was her forefinger that was on the trigger.
It was her thumb.
And it was her thumb. And he said the way that she was holding it to put it against her head so that she could like hit the safety and then fire it, he was like, we don't see that in
I just sent you the picture.
Suicides.
I just sent you the picture of how she was holding the gun and how it was found.
Okay,
how big it
yeah.
is. You see how small it is?
That's not that big.
Yeah, it's not a big gun.
Still though, like how her hand is,
no one shoots a gun like that.
No, that was his point.
Yes, it's not how you shoot a gun.
And that was his point. He was like, you don't have any stability that way. How would you shoot that way with no stability in your hand?
If someone does this and makes you hold your hand up there, they absolutely would.
Yeah, and then just put your hand on so that was like the first thing that made me think was her hand and the way that she was holding the gun, especially after the ballistics guy was sitting there talking about like, hey, we never see them this way. Like all the other cases that he had done with suicides, he said, we never see them this way. That nobody holds a gun like this.
Mm-mm.
So.
Unless they're going this way.
That's true. Well, the other thing is,
but this way, it just doesn't even make sense. You would still like do it this way.
Yeah. And because most people do hold it that way, and nobody can see what we're doing right now. We're just acting. I
literally thought that. I'm like, no one can see what we're doing.
We're just talking to each other right now. But we're showing each other that if somebody were to hold a gun to their own head, your forefinger is going to be what's on the trigger. They usually hold it to the temple, but even if you're going to turn it and go to your forehead, your forefinger is what's going to be on the trigger instead of the thumb, which is what.
The thumb,
how Jennifer Fairgate was
the
seen.
Thumb would be only used if it was to the front of the face.
And not a lot of people do that.
Yeah, they do.
Well, I feel like they usually go, well, anyway, this is a very
Yeah.
morbid talk.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. We can skip this part, but it doesn't make any sense. Let's put it that way.
No, it does not. And her hand that was holding the gun had no gunshot residue on it at all. It was completely clean. No blood, no gunshot residue. The gun didn't have any blood on it either, which is interesting. And I know that gunshot residue has been proven to not be 100% accurate, but that I still am like, yeah. Yeah, if she was the one holding the gun, like I there would have been something. There would have been something that you could prove. So some other things, some other details that they noticed immediately after finding her in this scene was that the bed was neatly made aside from the area where the body lay, and there were 2 duvets on the bed. So remember when I said previously the housekeepers, had brought that second one, she had put it away? There were 2 side by side on the bed when they found her. There were no signs of a struggle, and even when they did the autopsy, they did not find any injuries that indicated any kind of struggle. The furniture was undisturbed. Again, this room was pristine. The windows were closed, and the room was orderly. The weapon appeared recently fired. Anywho. I'm just like skipping through my notes here. I'm like, I already talked about that. So when they did a more detailed search of the room, they did find the 2 spent shell casings. So this gun was actually fired twice. One bullet had caused the fatal wound in her head. A second bullet had passed through a pillow and mattress and lodged in the floor. Now this pillow, when they first saw it, it was like flipped over. When they picked it up, on the other side was a scorch mark. So that could potentially mean that somebody was using it like a silencer. And so police, of course, you can already guess, and if you know this case, you already know that they're like, oh, this was a suicide. So then they sit there and they say, oh, she might have used the pillow to try to quiet like her first shot to like test the gun. The pistol magazine itself contained 7 rounds, but there was also a briefcase found in the room that contained 25 additional rounds of the 9mm ammunition. And again, if you're planning to end your life, you don't need 25 extra rounds with you. So that 25 extra rounds, I think, says a whole lot on its own. And another thing that I want to bring up, which I think you and I actually talked a little bit about before hopping on to record tonight, is how the woman was dressed. When they found her, she was in a long-sleeved blouse with silk tap pants, which apparently are like just like silk pajama pants or like shorts almost, stockings, and high-quality Italian-made shoes. Now, 2 interesting details about this. The high-quality Italian-made shoes, there was a housekeeper whenever they were remaking the room for 2 people who had seen another pair of shoes in the room, and she described them as being more colorful. And she had seen the shoes and was like, gosh, I kind of want to get shoes like that for myself. Like, oh, those are super cute. And then when they found the woman dead in the room, this housekeeper was like, those shoes she has on are not the same shoes I saw in the room previously, but they weren't found anywhere else. So like, who took the shoes? Where did the shoes go? Investigators also noted that all clothing labels had been deliberately removed from every single article of clothing, including the shoes. Now, they also saw that, and this was a little bit later, but they saw that the serial number on the gun had been removed and burned off with acid. No other jewelry was found on her except for a watch on her wrist, which the watch itself, actually, once they did some more investigation, also points to her possibly being German in origin, given that on the battery there was an engraving. I believe it was W395. And some people thought that the W could stand for, it's a German word, and I cannot think of what it was or pronounce it even if I tried, but it's a German word for meaning something along the lines of switch, change, or replace. And then investigators thought the 3 could stand for March, and the 95 is 1995. So that's another thing that made them think, okay, maybe she does come from Germany. Maybe, she is a German person or at some point spent time there. They also noticed that there were no personal items. And when I say no personal items, obviously, as we already know, no passport, ID, wallet, purse, identification, keys. But there's also no makeup, toiletries, or any other clothes. There's the clothes on her body, and that's it. And she apparently was staying in this room for like 3 to 4 days at this point, and she had no other clothes with her and no toiletries, nothing else. So it was there's no visible luggage, no everyday personal items. Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
They also found a plastic newspaper bag containing a copy of USA Today. The paper was actually addressed to room 2816, not room 2805. And they did find a fingerprint on that plastic bag that had the newspaper in it. However, I've heard that it didn't match her fingerprints, or that they sent it off and never heard anything about it. Now, when it comes to them like trying to figure out who this woman was, there was, and still is because he is still alive, a journalist who did a significant amount of work trying to figure out who this woman was. Now, again, she did say on her little like paper that she was filling out and whatnot when she checked in that she was from Belgium. The address that she wrote down, the street does exist, but the numbers on the buildings and the houses end right before her like number would be if she did live on that street. And then they also noted, and I'm not sure if this was from the hotel phone or if this was from some kind of personal phone, because I was again kind of getting some conflicting reports when I was doing my research, but she was calling several different phone numbers that were in Belgium. But when they tried to like track these numbers or call these numbers to figure out who she's calling, they didn't work. Whether that's because they didn't work because they were fake numbers, or they didn't work because they didn't work anymore. And they did take a drawing of her face to the area in Belgium to all the locals, because it's actually a small town. It's one of those towns where pretty much everybody knows everybody. So they took a sketch over there to see if anybody would recognize her. Anywho, not too long after she had died, they went ahead and they did bury her. And her grave initially bore no name, and it was just like a pauper's grave because they didn't know who she was. And they actually got rid of and destroyed a lot of the evidence because they had ruled it as suicide. They ruled it as suicide, so they didn't need to keep it. But they have no idea who this lady was. They did reopen her case in, I think it was around 2016, with this journalist who I spoke about earlier, who did a lot of work to try to figure out who she was. They were able to do isotope tests on her teeth. So they were able to determine that she did at least spend part of her teen years and was born in Germany because of that isotope testing. Because at the time there were like the nuclear testing and whatnot around when she would have been born based off of the testing they did. And there's certain chemicals that I guess will reside in our enamel. So there's that fun fact.
Yeah, forensic anthropology. You can understand that. I took that class.
Which I thought was wild, but cool. Other than that, they were able to get a full DNA profile from her when they exhumed her remains in 2016, but all they were able to determine from that was that, yes, she was indeed European, and they weren't able to get any DNA matches simply because there's nobody in their system who matches her. And they were sitting there saying, you know, they have kind of a similar system to what we have here, where like if you have a loved one who's missing, you can go and give a sample of your DNA and they can test against a lot of, what do they call it, Jane and John Does that they have to see if it's your relative. And they just, I guess nobody's gone or none of her relatives have gone and given their DNA. So there you go.
So I wanted to cover some of the key unexplained facts real quick. Just going over here. One, we have a false identity. We have the Jennifer Fairgate, which was obviously an alias, not her true name. Nationality, of course, is unknown. You know, the total lack of personal effects. You know, we have no ID, no credit cards, no personal effects whatsoever, other than like this watch that's found, which I'm not sure how much you went into the watch, but the watch itself is a dive watch that was found.
Yes.
Which is specific to people that are known to be in the military and spies. And typically when they have those watches, they add dates to them based on when they initially get them and when they do certain dives. So those dates do have significance to them. And she may just be recently have received it, like just got her dive watch. for a specific mission she may have done. The removing of all the labels, the meticulous cutout. Now that could be just to remove any kind of like, where did she recently buy these things? Who made this? Where would she have purchased this type of
So you
item?
can't track the clothes.
Well, and I mean, anybody could track the clothes to an extent, like, oh, I know who makes something like this, but sometimes those things have maybe like hidden things behind them. You never know. Discreet presence. I mean, she checked into the Plaza Hotel, which is a very nice hotel. So there's going to be a lot of foot traffic. It's not like she's in some like ghetto where she'll just go like unseen. She's not necessarily trying to completely hide herself, by the way. And Oslo
Well-
is like, again, a very clear place that people enter and exit for travel, for diplomatic things.
And they also, like, if you find the picture, which her sketch is pretty famous, the fact that her hair was cut so short is also another thing that definitely makes her stand out because, of course it wasn't the fashion then.
Well, so with the hair being short, my theory with the hair being short is very good to go with the theory of being espionage, which I'm going to get into. I was going to list some of the here in a second. I'm going to list some of the theories, but having short hair allows you to put on a wig a lot faster.
That's true.
So if you're in the game, being able to take it on and off quicker and hide, is a lot easier if your hair is short versus long and having to tuck a lot of things.
Yeah.
Later on down the road, which I'm surprised this took like so much time to find, there was a discovery of a key in some of her items of clothing that went to a Brussels bank, a safety deposit box that was found years later, but among all the stuff that they had collected, they just find this key, and all of a sudden years later they don't find anything in the safety deposit box. There's a lot of time between there that somebody could have taken stuff out of the safety deposit box.
Yeah, that's
There
right
could have
where
been
my brain
evidence in
went.
there. Evidence could have been taken out easily, for sure. And the weapon, like I said, when you mentioned the weapon, the 9mm is not a large weapon. It was a 9mm Browning, which is a very nice weapon, by the way, and it is a specific weapon that I would consider more on the sophisticated side. It's not like your average weapon. That would be a very nice weapon, not a cheap weapon. And then no next of kin. So like you said, no next of kin. However, why? She's obviously related to someone, but I have some theories here that I'm going to run through. So we have these key points that we've went over that you've given us. I wanted to kind of course, tackle the first one, which is the most popular, which is the espionage, which for those who don't know what espionage is, that's your spy. Someone is working for the government, someone is giving you some kind of confidential information, and they're basically going to be going through different types of handlers and all that stuff. There's a lot of like deception, infiltration, all the Hollywood clandestine things that you think of when you think of
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, there were major efforts to erase her identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, the key, the pistol, all these little things, the watch. These are all kind of key points that this person wasn't just someone trying to commit suicide in a really high-end hotel. Especially the way the gun was held, like you said.
Yes.
Yes, yes. So the scenario could play out that one, she was compromised and committed suicide to avoid capture. But we're going to scratch the suicide one because, ladies and
It
gentlemen,
just doesn't make sense.
it doesn't make sense. She didn't do that. So it's going to be someone took her out. Someone took her out. And so she was essentially assassinated, or basically she's like, this is my death. This is my last meal. That kind of thing.
That's true, because I guess with some of them, I don't know if this is true at all, but I guess technically with some of the spies, depending on what your mission is, they could literally send you somewhere and say, okay, this is where you're going to go to die, because you're done.
Yeah,
We've
you have
used
committed to the cause, but you have now done something we can't keep you alive for. And she's like, okay, I want to go here, and you're gonna have so many days to be there, your last supper. Those phone calls could have been phone calls to a number that, again, once I call this number, never answer it again, and you'll know that this is the last time. Like, if I had a child that was a spy, you would wonder if they're alive. But there are things they tell you, like, if this phone ever rings, never answer it, but I'm not coming home.
what that means. Yeah.
I'm not coming home. So that may have been a situation with the phone. The same thing is like,
sad. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
at the same time, to protect the family, say never identify my body.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when and that the town in Belgium that she said was a very small town. And so it could have been easily spread. Do not recognize her. You don't know who she is. Or she could even had like plastic surgery and no one did know who she was. You know,
1995, they could have.
yeah. But who killed her? Was it her own government that was like, it's time, we have to take you out? Or was it a competing agency that was like someone else? Like, we're going to kill one of your top spies. You know, like, or
They'd be doing that.
yes, did it set off a series of events?
That's also true.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also the whole like underworld involvement with, like a criminal organization, like organized crime. It's very possible she was connected to like a organized crime, and she was a part of some kind of like illicit activities, and then somehow got caught, whether she was undercover or actually a part of it.
I was about to say if she was undercover and they found out that she was a rat, basically, or found out that she was undercover.
Right. Human trafficking, like drugs, all these things here are ways that you want to know how to hide someone. Or was she a test? Can we hide someone? Can we get rid of someone's identity so much they'll never know who this person is, to where it's almost a test model for human trafficking? Can we erase someone good enough to where they don't know who she is?
Which, you could get into so many conspiracies with that of like, was this actually an experiment?
Was she taken? She was raised in the human trafficking environment, and then she was taken out to see, can they find who she is? Can she trace back who she is? It's very possible.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So that's a scenario of just being a part of that, maybe an underworld professional hit based on how would the system hold this person? How could they find this person? So, yeah, and I definitely feel like this is a staged suicide. The room was locked from the inside.
100%.
We didn't look at any of the video, but like a single the gunshot wound. Who's to say? And I'm pretty sure it might have been, I don't know. The security guard comes up. She could have been dead for a little time in there. The room could have been cold.
Oh yeah.
Letting the body like the death time frame be a little slower. And then when the security guard came, shot the gun through the pillow. Who's to say?
That's true.
We don't know. We don't know which order.
Exactly. Who knows if the one that they say is the second shot that went through the pillow, was that one first or second? Nobody knows.
Also,
nobody actually knows.
I don't remember this, but something reminds me in my head that when I originally and I watched this years ago, when you were most recently watching the Unsolved Mysteries, did they say that the gun that went through her head was found parallel to where she laid on the bed, or as if she was sitting up?
They said it was as if she was laying down.
Which made no sense.
Yep, so she would have shot herself laying down.
Right. Yes. So
Also
she was down.
Sense.
Yes. So, yeah. Anyways. So that I did remember something like that. Like it was really weird where the bullet hole was found. Was like right across from them. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Oh, yeah. So definitely suggesting this irrational like setup for her to look as like she committed suicide, but they didn't do a very good job of it. That's for sure.
Well, they didn't.
No. Which makes you wonder if it was actually a espionage of your own kind, because it doesn't seem very organized in that aspect. It doesn't seem like they did a very good job of it. But the person could have escaped easily through the door and not seen the video, or out the window.
Because they had said, again, and I just don't know how much to trust it, because they had said in reports that they didn't see any evidence of somebody leaving through the window. But I'm like, y'all still ruled this as suicide while looking at all of these other, like, what I feel are blaringly obvious signs of there being something more going on here. And again, I just keep coming back to, nobody knew that they were supposed to be watching for somebody to leave. At the end of the day, nobody knew they were supposed to be watching for someone to leave. Like you literally just said not too long ago, it's a high foot traffic area. Somebody can leave and just walk right out the door and nobody would know anything different. And nobody checked the cameras. So how do they actually know for sure that nobody left that room? Because they sit there and they say, oh, it was locked from the inside. I would not be surprised if somebody who is in espionage would know how to work those kind of mechanics to make something look a certain way. Of course they know how to.
Well, let's talk about the timing of the gunshot, because it's very relative to when the hotel staff shows up. This aspect is more about strategy and psychology within this like time frame. or in the framework of this planning? Were they watching through like an underdoor camera, waiting for the right time? Was she already dead? Or maybe they don't even remember something that may have triggered that. I mean, if you're in like these intelligent agencies, there's all kinds of things that could have been suggested for them to even be like, someone could have pushed the button to be like, go check on this woman for not paying, and who was checking the TV at all times? There was, how is this happening? So anyways, so the hotel staff, they're on their way up there to ensure like to discuss, did they do this to make sure the discovery of the body was pretty quick? Making sure that
Yeah,
they can
I
control the
wonder.
narrative? Yeah, if the goal was to make it appear as if it was a sudden, desperate suicide, ensuring the body was found quickly, they would make sure that a third party, like staff, could be part of that plan. They would, wanna make sure that the body was discovered in a certain timeline.
And that makes me wonder if it's like if she was a message, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah,
Somebody out there knew who she was.
or she was a pawn. Was this almost like you think of a staged bank heist in a way? When you set off this event at a specific time, it's like as soon as this happened, all the other dominoes have to fall. So
Yeah.
a distraction for the escape, like the gunshot's loud, it's attention grabbing. So everybody's going to be on their toes. You're going to have a lot of people focusing on this case police wise. So it's going to almost be like a smoke and mirrors, you know? It's almost going to be something like kind of like focus over here while we're doing this over here.
Mm-hmm.
It's very possible. You're also with the quickness of the gunshot. Sometimes if you think about it, a security guard's not going to think about like going in the room and protecting evidence. So a lot of the things could have been there and they were lost. Something that might have been like sealed off essentially might have broke off like in the
Yeah.
chain of command that way when it comes to like.
And they didn't even, a lot of crime scenes they'll seal off for several days while they're doing their investigation. They didn't bother to do that at all with this case because they immediately said, oh, it's suicide. We don't have to.
Mhm.
So there's so much that they could have discovered that could have given us more information, and instead it was lost or destroyed. I mean, the
Mhm.
bedding was either destroyed or cleaned within 24 hours of her body being discovered.
Yeah. There's also, so I don't know if you stumbled upon this as well, but I didn't go down this. Maybe we can pick a couple of these cases up down the road and add them as like an extra case load to compare to this one. But there have been some armchair sleuths that have tried to link this case to other mysterious deaths that are, espionage-esque
Mm-hmm.
from the Cold War and post-Cold War era in Europe, almost saying that these theories of her being a spy and all these things are very unique in nature and comparative to some of these other cases. So we'll have to maybe tackle those down the road. I think
Absolutely.
I have them listed somewhere, not in my notes for this one, but I have them listed somewhere when I was writing something down. But anyways, like I said, my other theories that I said is like the decoy operation, like the Patsy.
Mm-hmm.
The core idea here is that she was deliberately used as a highly disposable decoy. Like I was saying, almost like the
Yeah,
smoke
yeah.
and mirrors.
Which I didn't even think about that before, but when you talked about it just now, I'm like, oh, that makes so much horrible sense.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, she obviously she wasn't anybody, so the big part of the mystery is who she is, so it kept people on their toes trying to figure out who she was for so
Mm-hmm.
long. Yeah. Now, let's just set aside the laws of physics as we knew them back then. We're looking at 1995. We're still in the early age of cell phones and pagers and things like that. So for us, technology is still in its infancy as a retail source. We're still only able to purchase certain things as consumers. But on the spy world, they had way bigger things going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to think they may have had some different ways to kill someone and make it look a different way, or even whatever. Even though I'm using more of a fantastical theory here. I'm like, well, we could have had drones. We could have had like,
I mean, there's all kinds of things that they could have had, to be honest
Mhm.
with you, because there's all kinds of things that they come out with, like, oh, this is new technology. It's actually not,
Mhm.
because they've been testing it for years and years and years
Oh, yeah, there were
before.
probably so many interesting government experiments from back then that were being
Yeah.
tested.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
something that came to mind, and this is going to be like more of a kind of like the finality of my theories about the other person in the room. One, of course, the shoes, that there was somebody
Mhm.
else and they took the shoes, but the newspaper. Was the newspaper a clue that the person was staying in the other room and that they were able to
Yes.
get in and out via the outside doors
Mhm.
or the outside balcony that looked over? Maybe they were able to go back and forth, and that was the clue of who. Maybe she picked up that on purpose, like,
Mhm. Well,
leaving
'cause
clues
then
behind, and maybe this person was from the US because
USA
there was some
Today.
clues from the US on there.
I mean, there were even some people who wondered if she was actually staying in room 2816 for one reason or another. And room 2805 was meant to be some kind of like meeting place or something. Like she's not supposed to stay there all the time for one reason or another.
Mm. Well, and it could
Which
have been the whole floor could have been taken by other people.
honestly,
I mean, there's probably other rooms, yeah.
with some of these like missions and such, because even the other people would sit there and they would say like, oh, she was quiet and she didn't, like, the other people in the room, like, she didn't disturb us.
She wasn't in there, and she wasn't even eating. Well, if the room was pristine, she was probably there the first night. So, hear me out. The first night, she ordered room service because no one else was there. No one had made it to the meeting. She was the first one. She got there the day early, scoped everything out, gave an assessment. Now the new crew comes in. They're in another room, and now they're eating over there.
Hmm.
And that's why her room stays pristine.
Because
So,
nobody's staying in there.
nobody's staying in there. Yeah, who knows? Okay. Well, so this has been a nice startup case backed into the 2026
Yes.
podcast era. Yes.
Yes.
And so hopefully you guys have some thoughts and things you'd like to share with us. If so, you can email us at info@theparallaxpodcast.com. You can always follow us on our social media by going to the parallaxpodcast.com website. Click on the icons. And you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Until then, till our next episode, thank you for listening. I'm Karisa.
And I'm Willow. Goodbye, mortals.